G'day, folks. It is the AOS coach here, and all of you sea dwellers, I'm glad that the wave have brought you here. That's pretty good. That's completely off the cuff. It is Idoneth Deepkin. Usually I try to make something off the cuff. I completely butcher it, but we are here talking Idoneth Deepkin. You got a new battle tome. I've waited for the FAQs to drop, and
Yep.
I have the first wave of guests. First being the former Midwest Master, competitor in the Great Plains Masters as well. You may have seen him talk about Idoneth Deepkin on Warhammer Weekly. It is Paul Wright, and he has gone into such depth that he's got the fish tank behind him, and I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I swear it's not the only reason you're invited. I swear.
Well, I figured if I get a chance, I got to throw them in there.
It's called method acting, right? Like you're getting
Yep.
into the theme, and you
Yep.
how better can you talk about it than having some thralls and some reavers in your fish tank?
Yep.
So if anyone who doesn't know who you are, Paul, you obviously, very, very, very active on my Discord, talking about IDK all the time.
Yep.
Who are you, and what's your reputation with IDK?
Well, so I live in Oklahoma in the USA, and I'm playing with the team Flying Monkeys, and I started off played some Stormcast for my first year, and then I bought my daughter a box of IDK, and then I ended up basically taking over that army because I really liked the theme and I liked the hit fast, move fast kind of stuff. I have some flesh eaters. I've tried a few other armies, but I keep coming back to IDK. It's really my favorite army and the one that I get the most excited about. So I got to play a lot in second edition, mostly IDK. Got to play some tournaments and. So it's been pretty cool. And now in third edition, I'm glad it seems like we got a pretty good book where we're still competitive, still have some builds, and getting to do a lot. I like to do a lot of list building and math hammer and that kind of stuff. And so it's given me some opportunities for that too.
It's a great faction. I've almost pulled my trigger twice on them. First was when I came out of Aquaman. Like
Yeah.
as I was watching Aquaman 1, I'm like on the GW website, like pulling up turtles and sharks and all
Yeah.
these things. And I'm like, I looked at the price, I'm like, nah,
No.
I love the idea, not just today. Then the second time is one of my mates was selling a bunch of Alapexes the other day. And I just watched a whole bunch of the old 90s cartoon Street Sharks. I'm
Hmm.
like, man, I could paint 4 Street Shark Alapexes right now. And I almost pulled the trigger and I didn't. But
Yeah.
it's one of these factions that I think that I will eventually play because it's just beautiful.
Hmm.
Like it's such a really
Right.
nice army. And you see people paint all of the colors and nothing looks weird. And I love playing with resin. So, using water effects and using
Hmm.
resin. And there's just so much creativity that you can use with this book,
Yeah,
this army.
I got to paint some of mine like my like I painted some eels like my clownfish with that pattern and that kind of stuff. So got to do that was some interesting things.
I did actually lie. There's actually a third time that I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do a bunch of turtles with some
Uh-huh.
bandanas, but then they jacked up the points to 500. I'm like, I can't run 4 Ninja turtles at 500. I need a leader turtle, but
Yeah, yeah, they got to take one and make it into a leader, so we could go back
so
to 4.
outside of my idiotic 90s cartoon obsessions of Street Sharks and Ninja Turtles
Yeah.
and maybe a Master Splinter Vermin Lord, what keeps drawing you into IDK? Like, why is this the faction? You said you talked about you have Flesh Eater Courts, you have Stormcast.
Hmm.
Why is this the faction that keeps drawing you in? For someone who might be watching this, thinking about picking up that latest battle box, who's thinking about jumping in and playing IDK.
It's been really interesting. I enjoy the speed of the army. Between the run and charge and just a lot of the mounted stuff being 10, 12, 14-inch move, it really gives me the way I like to play is I like to kind of play ideally as a scalpel to kill something that's worth more than what I'm losing in the trade, and it gives you a lot of that opportunities, I think. It also helps to just uh, knowing that you have a strike first at some point in the game, you can try to plan around it, and it just kind of suits my personality more than just like playing something that's just like going to stand there and take a bunch of hits and just eat it all and not really dish much out. I like to be able to remove that thing that's annoying me.
Yeah, which is normally like my focus is always removing that bloody Achillean king because he's always as the opposition and like I've got to kill the Achillean king. I've got to kill everything that's going to do damage in that turn 3.
Yep.
And I love the predictability, but I also hate the predictability because as an opponent, it's that race behind it's the race on the clock to go, how much damage can I deal before you go strike first on everything? But I know that you are going to be doing that. So it's basically like there's no tricks.
Right.
It's you are gonna you know you want to do it. I know
Right.
you want to do it. So who
Right.
can do it better and who can stop each other?
Right.
And by the way, I've forgotten, Phil's reminded me, you've also got Crabnos. Gosh, I love that crab. That's the stupidest model in the world. But I love more of those like monkey fighting with knives and animals, and I love Crabnos. But
this is my here's my my proxy, my flaming crab. It's on a screaming bell, but that's what I use my crab for, is to make it into a flaming head.
That's amazing. What changed in this book? Because IDK obviously was one of the oldest books that we've had, right? Like it was a first edition book that completely skipped second edition. There was obviously you could play it in second edition. There was just no updates, right? And it held really well. The book actually held up really well, and IDK were always in that top meta of some description. But from what I remember and what I really experienced, is very one-dimensional.
Right.
IDK has always been very one-dimensional. You played well with offensive eels, then you went defensive eels, then you kind of buffed up a couple of sharks. It's had these waves here and there, but it's mostly been around eels.
Yeah, I really think that. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, is the eel meta still around? Is it still dominant? And what have you noticed between jumping from the first book to this updated book?
I think it's still playable, but you won't see it very often because the biggest change was everything going up 20%, right? Everything went up 20% points with 3.0, and it just went up 20% again. And they kept like the Ishlian Guard, they went up way in price and got a little bit worse, which they're 2-up ignoring Rend. Whenever that combo happens, that's pretty bad feels anyway. I understand that, but so I think that there's a lot more either thrall base builds where you're trying to do damage, or where you're trying to use thralls and reavers and heal those back in, or you're playing sharks and turtle. So I think they kept the core of the rules similar. They kind of soft touch those, and I think a lot of people were thinking like, oh, well, they're not going to get the Tides of Death, but I think even with keeping the Tides of Death, we're still good, but there's still stuff that can take care of us, and so you have to play it with more. It hurts more every unit you lose in the new book. I feel like you lose a couple units and half your army's dead, and you just can't compete with the summoning and attrition meta for some of the other stuff. So that's kind of, you got to really pick your fights and make the best of them while scoring your battle tactics.
Do you think part of it though, and this is a thought, right? Because we are, if you're listening to this live, we are on the cusp of a updated General's Handbook. So we'll see potentially new battle pack, new battle plans. Games Workshop's already said that we are going into a battle line focus. Now, does that mean hordes? Does that mean just battle line status and you score more things and your battle tactics are focused around battle line kind of status? But do you think that part of the problem with your defensive eels has to do with just the sheer amount of high mortal wounds going around in the game? Because, when we started off this edition, or this third edition, General's Handbook 2021, we had a lot of high save, 2-up armor saves, ward saves. So people were just trying to cut through it because Ren 1, Ren 2 wasn't doing enough with just mortal wounds. Do you think that because, your eels just don't have that many wounds, that at this currently right now, because of the amount of mortal wounds, is what's not making them viable? Or is there something more that's happened?
I think it's a mixture that with the save stacking meta, even cutting through stuff before, if you send in 3 more Sargard, you can go kill 12 wounds of something. But now, oh, it's the finest hour, it's all out defense, it's mystic shielded. Oh, you got -2 rend, you still don't, you do 4 damage, and then they kill you back in the hit back, that kind of stuff. So I think you've got to, this book really wants you to use your strike first, use overwhelming power when you can, and get to it that way. I think that the eels just keep kind of creeping up in points, and that's why I think they're trying to get people to pull out the thralls. A lot of the rules are now, hey, you can do it, with this hero helps thralls and reavers, this hero helps thralls and reavers. And they also took away a lot of the buffs for mounts. So like a lot of my buffs in 2.0 was, hey, I'm reroll ones to hit, but now it's reroll ones to hit except for mounts. So whenever 2/3 of my attacks are bites and tails, which I'm glad they streamlined it down to one thing in some cases. But with the turtles and the king and the eels, with not getting all those buffs on your mount as well, it made it to where it's less efficient units, damage efficiency.
Yeah, agreed. I think that and you know what? I'm going to ask you the question instead of say it myself. What has glowed up? So if I was an Idoneth player, last year or last book, and I'm now picking up the book for the first time, what has glowed up? What has become good that wasn't very good? There was a bunch of jokes. You mentioned Reavers for a second. Old mate Lotan. There's so many things that never saw play in the last book. What is going to see play? What do you like now?
I feel like the number 1 pick in the draft. Yeah, Buck, I'd have the number
We'll
1 pick in the
talk about
draft.
turtles in a minute too, because I want to talk about turtles because that got jacked up in points. But
Yeah.
talk to me about
All
things
right,
that
so my
have
number 1 pick in
become
the
good.
draft is the regular Killian King. He is in every list that I play. His striking first with D3 units is so valuable. Even though you can only do it once a game, that's fine. You can pick your battles really there, and then if you combo his what I call the Murder King, where you give him extra attacks for every unit that's with him, and then you turn on the strike first. I mean, +6 or +10 attacks is not. I've seen that in about half of my games, you know what I mean, on his polearm and his falchion. And I've been playing him some with flaming weapons, so then I turn on 4 damage each. 2 damage goes to 3 on the charge, goes to 4 with flaming weapon, 3 rend, and if he's doing 11 attacks, that's a lot of potential output. And so I think he's my number 1. I've been really, I don't think it's in every list, but the Eidolon of the Sea, Wizard Eidolon, has got a big glow up to where just his spell alone, where he can reduce the save characteristic by D3, or either for D3 units or 1 unit for D3, that causes people to play way differently because they have their big hero or Archaon or or whatever, and they don't want to get in too close to him. And then you can put Steed of Tides in him, and he can teleport around too and help you to take down something that's tanky, get through that save sacking. Like we said, thralls, they're finally got their 2-inch range. The dream has happened. You know what I mean? They hit a lot harder. They still can die. If they get hit punched first. I had a bunch of chain rasps get like 15 thralls out of my 20 block, and I was a little sad, but that's the way it goes. Sharks are better. I think being 8 wounds, it gives them the cover bonus, lets them work with the turtle. But they're fast like eels, and they have shoot. I like to play it with shooting rather than net. Maybe 1 net if I'm playing a lot, but they got, I think, a glow up.
Did they go to 10 wounds?
They went to 10, and then they went back to 8 at
they're back to
3.0.
8.
Yeah. So the points stayed the same, and then they went back to 8 wounds. But it lets you get cover bonus. It lets you get the +1 turtle save. So it combos, but it's kind of a mixed bag,
What about your archers? What about your
Um,
reavers?
the
Because
Reavers are
they had
quite the
the
Reavers are quite good now with threes and threes instead of fours and fours, and neg one rend instead of no rend, 18-inch range instead of 18, and then triple shots. So they get 2 shots all the time now, and +1 to hit if they're within 9. Those have been something that people have been very scared of. I know that they've got a reputation now where I see everyone just playing like measuring out for those Reavers. Okay, how far can it go? 8, and then it can shoot 18, and so that's pretty hard to stay away from. So in the kind of in between Frankenstein, I played one tournament where I got to have the best of both worlds, where I had uh, you know 100 Reavers, or what was it? A lot of Reavers. It was like 50 Reavers, and they were shooting on twos, rolling ones and twos, and they just like killed everything turn one because they had all the buffs and all the bonus. They're not killed everything. We killed half their army turn one, so that was pretty broken. But I think even new Reavers you really want to take at least a couple. Um, I like to put them in the boat sometimes. So then they get the cover bonus, and if anyone charges the boat, they get to unleash hell. And the best thing about them and unleash hell is now you're within 9 inches, so I'm getting my +1 to hit, which counteracts your -1 to hit for unleash hell. So I think they're a solid piece in the book. Like you said, Lotan, I did never buy him. I like the model, and I finally bought him because I like, he does work. You need a foot hero in every list, really, I think, because you have to turn on that Tides of Death table. You got to turn on the rituals, I mean. So against a shooting army, that ritual turn one, where they can only shoot you from 12 inches, is worth 200 points some games because it would keeps you from losing your main stuff, um, or being able to turn on the other rituals for the +1 to run and charge turn 2, or 5 up ward turn 3 for your ground troops. So those are the main ones
basically
that I
what I'm
think.
hearing is that there's a lot of good things that have happened, and there's a
Mhm,
lot of units that weren't very popular in the last book that
mhm,
had some improvements in. You're right. Like the Namarti keyword, both the thralls and the reavers, whether it was the streamlining of the profile, and I think the reaver profile has gotten better. Yes, I know
mhm,
some people aren't happy that you'd lost the 3 shots, and there was some shenanigans there that you could do with curse and just do an industrial amount of damage.
mhm.
But then your thralls got your 2-inch range. You said Lotan's got some good, yeah, Lotan's got some good abilities. I'm so happy to see the Eidolon, both the offensive and the magic one as well. So you got Storm and Sea.
Mhm.
Both of them now are viable. There's some good artifact options in there, some good spell choice options. What about some of the things that maybe aren't as good? I mean, Turtles went to 500.
Yeah,
So
a
that was a big
real
jump.
quick correction for George in the chat. You can't get -4 rend on the Reavers. It only works in melee. So the plus D3 minus D3 to save only works against melee units. So that would be even crazier if you could shoot them off after that. But all right, so yeah, turtle. I love the turtles. I got 2 turtles. I was playing double turtle most of the last year, and they did so much work. They were underpointed, scary unit with a great save. Good hammer and anvil and buffer piece. I mean, but at 500 points, it was kind of like, ooh, it hurts, But I didn't play it in these first few lists, the first tournament, but I'm making lists now with getting a turtle back in there. I think his +1 save buff is worth it. His +1 to hit for the ground troops is good, and he's still something people got to worry about because he can go in there and wreck house, and he's got better shooting. I mean, that's one I think the whole army glue up on was, or glowed up on, I don't know the word, but on shooting. Reavers got better at shooting, turtles got better at shooting, sharks, um, even the Eidolons. I hadn't played the sea before, but his a little bit of shooting, and I feel like it really makes it to where people have to see, if they don't see Deepkin as a shooting threat, then they're missing out on some of the strengths of the army to be able to shoot off some stuff and then charge in and fight off the other stuff, or shoot off a screen and charge past it or something. Let's see the other unit. Okay, so turtle, he went up in points, 500 points from 340 or 380, I think he was.
Yeah, it went up about 120 points. It was either 360 or 380. Then it went to
he was 380.
500.
Yeah, it was like 340 to begin with, and then went to 380, and now to 500. And so he got worse. He got a little bit worse, I think, because on the charge, instead of doing D6 to everything within an inch that's a 1 wound character, and D3 to the stuff that's more than 1 wound characteristic, now he gets to use his monstrous and do D6 if it's a 1 wound. So like it's like half or a third of the damage on the charge, but he does have better shooting. But it's still a lot of points. But
yeah, I mean, it's 16 wounds. It's got a 2-up armor save until it's taken half of its wounds characteristic.
Yeah, and most of the game, it's sitting on that 2-up save until it dies.
It's a tough nut to crack. It's not an easy nut to crack. But
it also gained the totem keyword, which has been really good. I like that because that was one of the problems I had before, was keeping a hero close enough to it to be able to, give it its buff in.
So what went down in quality? Did anything become less popular? Like I thought Turtle might be, because when this book first dropped, people were like, "Oh, 500 points, too much," and the Turtle got dropped. Right. And maybe Incomplete Sphere had said, I keep coming back to the Turtle. So maybe people dropped it thinking 500 points are going to get me that Eidolon back into my list. A lot of people weren't running Eidolons. They kind of went, "Oh, I'm still missing some things with that monster, the save bubble, all of the good things that the Turtle does." But is there anything that maybe people used to run, whether it's the named Achillean King, whether it is, I don't know.
I think Volteed isn't going to get nearly as much play. He's still good, but for the points, it's tough. I almost auto take the regular King, and so do I need a Volteed as well? Turtles won't get as much. More Sargard, you'll see a lot less of them. You might have a 3-pack or a 6-pack just to be that lightning hammer, but with the Sharks being similarly competitive, but having that additional shooting threat, so you can hold back if you need to and just shoot at people, and then whenever they get in range or whenever you get your run and charge, you go in and hit there. I think the Soul Scryer is playable if you really lean into the Soul Scryer. He got a lot worse. Sorry, that's the one that I think took the biggest, because before he gave you the Stinky Finger, the +3 to charge, and he would go in there and he made your army gave your threat range so much stronger than it was before, and he gave you the deep strike. But now he just gives you the deep strike and no plus to charge. I think you really need a foot hero, but I'm not taking him in any of my lists. He does let you deploy within 9 of him, and so you don't have to be 6 as a board edge with your unit that he brings with him. So there are some plays where you can get on an objective, but I tend to take either Tidecaster so I can have 2 rituals, or Lotan so I can have 1 and the +1 to wound for everything. Most of this stuff is restricted to +1 to hit or wound just for the melee weapons and not for the mount traits, but he gets you both.
Anything else that you think is maybe is going to retirement for the near distant future? And again, obviously, we're on the cusp of a new version of the game, right?
Stuff can change at any time, and you get a few 20 points up or down, it changes your whole list, or what you want to take. But I think that's the main things that changed, because we don't really have that deep of a book. We're pretty shallow of a book with only, I don't know, 15 war scrolls when you count the double models.
One thing I do want to ask you about is your quote unquote new unit, your bloodthirsty shiver, the pack of 3 sharks, which is obviously not obviously, but only available if you're Futhan. Do you like Futhan? And I'll get to Legion's abilities, and we'll get into some of the other stuff, because I want to get Paul's thoughts on, the Tides of Death and the new Ishran rituals, because that got a big glow up too, I think. What are your thoughts on the pack of 3 sharks? Would you run the Futhan army for it? Would you drop the 500 odd points to run 3 sharks as your 3 battle line options and to get the boosts?
I really think it's kind of a trap. it's it's the shiver if you want to run them as battle lines so that you have all mounted stuff, or so that you can run 10 sharks and a hero or something like that, go for it. But I think that the extra exploding sixes for one model out of the three, or is just, it's not very much. Like it's like 1 or 2 damage a turn maybe, and I think there's just better sub allegiances unless you just really need them as your battle line, unless you need to turn them into battle line. I think the shivers, I'm not as impressed with the shivers.
I thought it might be a points discount. When I looked at it, I'm like, oh, maybe it'll
Yeah,
be
if there was a
like
points
a
discount, because
package.
I've been toying with 3 sharks or 6 sharks, and different ways to do it. But yeah, without the discount, it's kind of, and that they're 3 individuals, so they can't even be. You can't have the alpha shark if you run in a 2-pack. You can have an alpha shark that's +1 to hit on his hand weapons, which is just a small bonus because his hand weapons aren't what do the damage. But you lose that because they have to be 3 individuals. So it's kind of a wash there, I think.
Well, let's talk about the allegiance abilities, right? So
Hmm.
you've got your 6 sub factions. I'll get to that in a minute because I've got the sub faction rules on a different slide.
Hmm.
But the 3 big things, if I'm a Deepkin player, is going to be my Forgotten Nightmares. That didn't change. You still have to fight or you have to target a Idoneth Deepkin unit that's eligible, that's closest to it. So
Right.
you can't, great right now for like your long strikes, your bow snakes, all the things that want to reach out and touch the thing that's being protected. That still is there for the Forgotten Nightmare rules.
Right, and
Then you got
we still get the allies get to work as that screen as well. So my Aether Wings are still in play. I know they went up in points as well, but to use them as, you have to shoot at this Aether Wing instead of my more expensive unit or whatever.
it's a good use of finding like a cheap, quick ally, as you
Hmm.
mentioned. Eighth. I haven't seen Eighth Wings for a while. People, I remember Deepkin
Well, they
players
went
used
from
to
40 to 65, so like, talk about a percentage point increase. It's pretty pretty rough.
Yeah, they did go up in points. Like there was a time where Aether Wings were everywhere, and like people would be like, go on buying sales, like, oh, I want to buy your Aether Wings like you and everyone else in the world. Like,
Yep.
but now long strikes are popular, so maybe Aether Wings are cheap. But you got 2 other key things, right? You got your Tides of Death, you got your Ishlan rituals. The
Hmm.
Tides of Death didn't really change from memory. It's all
Nope.
the same, right? The,
Yep.
the only thing though is that there used to be the character that could flip the tides if it was a
Yeah, the
general.
Tidecaster could flip the tides. Now you can flip the tides with using a command ability, but you can't combo I played a whole bunch of reverse tide Fluthan where I'd flip the tides. Turn 1, I'd be run and charge, and I could just alpha strike like nothing, like no one's business, and I'd be reroll once to hit. But that combo has kind of gone away. You can still flip them, and you can still fight first turn 2, but your turn 1 is a retreat and charge, so it's not really as useful unless you're going to get Alpha Strike. And I think there are lists with them, but it's not going to be used as much. And the Tidecaster lost that ability altogether. He's just a single cast wizard that turns on 2 rituals. But
So would you take your general as that with that particular command trait to be able to flip the tides, or do you think the current wave of tides, just your standard turn 1, turn 2, what is currently in the book, is enough right now?
yeah, I'm toying with lists, but right now I haven't gone there. I feel like the King's uh, command trait is so vital to killing off something that's worth more than he is. The Unstoppable Fury, where you get +2 attacks for every unit next to you. I have a hard time finding anything that outperforms that. But I think I will play with some flip tides eventually, but it's hard to give that away.
And I think that was probably what when I was looking at the book and I was trying to understand. I'm not a Deepkin player, so I can only do math hammering type things. But when I was looking at it, I just felt that I love the ability to flip the tides, obviously, but the sacrifice to do it now versus the cool command traits that are with your Ishlan heroes, your Eidolon generals, as well as the Achillean one, like whether it's
Hmm.
Achillean is the king, or even is a general, or even your Eidolon. There's a couple of good options where I thought, it's not my high
Yeah,
priority.
yeah. The other thing is, I feel like now that I've been playing more non-flip tides this year, I can see where it puts people in that squeeze. Like they're trying to wait till turn 4 to fight, but the game's mostly over by turn 4. You know what I mean? So if you can get them to back up and try to hold off, and you can outscore them in turn 1, 2, and 3, then they have a hard time catching up in 4 and 5. So I feel like that might be flipping the tides. You kind of give them a chance to just hide in the corner for 2 turns and still come back and outscore you. So it depends. I think it also depends on what you're running. If I'm running eels and sharks that can make the distance turn 1, turn 2, get across the board, then I would be more likely to flip tides than with like thralls and reavers and some of the slower stuff, the 6-inch
But kind of
movers,
what you're
14-inch
but what
movers.
you're saying right now is that eels you're probably not going heavy eels like you used to, because
Right.
again, there's more diversity in the builds. Things have gotten glow ups,
Mhm.
and the requirement to just go like 21 or 15 eels like you used to.
Mhm. And you can't take it. I mean, yeah, you can't. It feels like you can't take as many, and when a few of them die, you're in bad trouble. So
What about the rituals? I mean, the
the
rituals are
rituals are
pretty
so
good.
much better. Like the old
Mm.
rituals, we had the cheeky, like you had happen to you a couple times. You were saying, you can't fly this turn ritual, but you had to roll 2 dice. It was maybe like a 20 or 30%. You can make it a little bit higher percent if you're next to a boat, if you're next to another foot hero, but it was really either heal D3 to the Eidolon and he gets to reroll hits, which he already was hitting on like 2s or 3s. But the real, and you don't get cover, which usually there's not a lot of stuff that's playing hard into cover. And then that you can't fly. I loved doing that against a night haunt or some flying army that just they trap themselves behind. They trap their terrorgeist behind their front line. It's like, oh yeah, that guy can't fly,
That
and
was the
you're in
worst
trouble.
because of the big bases. Like, a lot of your monsters that are the flyers, and
Yeah,
trying to navigate through terrain when you're not flying is an absolute pain in the ass.
but I think
But
we got them way better here for 2
yeah,
reasons. One, they're better abilities, and 2, you have no way to stop me from turning it on. I don't have to
mm.
roll a dice. I just decide, hey, I'm playing against long strikes. So turn 1, you can shoot 12-inch with those long strikes because I'm turning on that ritual. Or the second one, I want +1 to run and charge. I use that one a lot. I'd feel like the extra mobility without having the Soul Scryer in there to point stuff and give you +3. That almost gives you the same amount of movement. And then the one that I do if I'm playing a Namarti heavy, I'll go and have in the 5 up ward save for turn 3. But I usually run with the first 1 or 2. The Tidecaster, him giving you to be able to turn on 2 of them, it's so nice. And I don't even have to tell you until I get command points for turn 1. So it's way later decision. Like I already know who's going first. If I'm going first and I'm not worried about their shooting because I'm going to go kill it, I'll just not even turn on that ritual and go with something else. That's something that I think they're doing more and more of, to where it's later in the game you decide on that kind of stuff with the new books, I feel like.
Yeah, and having the flexibility of going to the table to go, right, I'm up against X type of army. I'm going to need probably this type of thing. Having some flexibility compared to having it documented on your list and you're kind of fixed to something.
Right.
Do you see things like Spiteful Riptide, which is the 4-up D3 mortal wounds when you retreat under Ebb Tide? Is that something that you would use, or is there
No,
any
I mean,
situations where,
the,
like,
the,
I'm
ol-
struggling, like,
the only place I would use it is like if I had an iron rack and I happened to be able to turn on that, and I got, you know, the king got surrounded, but he survived and he could do it. But I think that one's not, I don't see myself ever turning that one on. It just, one, most of my games are decided 90% by turn 3, and 2, D3 on a 4-up when you retreat. Okay, it helps a little bit, but I feel like it's usually too late in the game.
it seems like a battle tactic where it's super situational. In this particular moment, I'm going to drop
Hmm.
this. But would I choose that over like?
Before at the start of turn 1, am I deciding, oh well, I know turn 4 I'm gonna be retreating and charging with all no.
And on 50-50 chance, like I
Right.
happen to find that situation on a 4-up.
So
But
I feel like
yeah, you're
that
right.
one's
Like
kind of a waste, but it's all right.
Creeping
We
Mist
got
and
3 good ones. So you're one great one and then 2 good ones. I feel like Creeping Mist is just so good against the shooting. We already have anti-shooting tech. I think we're the best anti-shooting army in the game.
yeah, absolutely. And having Surging Stream that allows you to really guarantee yourself the charge, right? A 3-inch charge getting the +1 to run and charge rolls
Hmm.
immediately is just powerful. And yeah, the 5-up ward is great as well. But I think yeah, overall, majority of your rules didn't change. Mostly, IDK
Hmm.
still feels like IDK. It's not like Nurgle who got a fundamental restructure.
Right.
A lot of good things in there, and I think you're right. The Ishran rituals only improved. When I saw it and I compared it to the old ones, I'm like, yeah, you lost the fly one, but everything else, it is great.
Right. And we have just having the ability to turn it on. Decide, don't roll a dice. Obviously, anytime you can not have to roll a dice, and it's you can build the game that you want it to be. So
So given that you don't have to roll a dice now, how does that change the way that you play or think about your list using Ishran rituals?
the main thing is I'm a lot less worried about shooting armies because bow snakes and long strikes and sentinels, I've got a counter for them, so I don't really have to, like used to. I would bring 1 or 2 Aether Wings in every list just to give me that thing, but now I can work around it. I feel like don't have to worry so much about turn 1 shooting. And then I think the Stream of Surging Tide, the add 1 to run and charge, is basically takes over for what the Soul Scryer used to do on the +3 to charge. It's not quite as good, but it works for my whole army, and I don't have to just do it against one unit. So I think it just frees you up. It gives you a little freedom to do some more lists where you're not as worried about certain things.
I imagine Creeping Mist is very powerful as well because if you can do a low drop army, so you go battle regiment, or you just
Right,
do
1 or 2
absolute
drop, and then
minimum,
you go
you
first,
can,
and good luck.
correct. You can give away first turn because if I'm another faction, I'm worried about those 30-inch or 24-inch, double shooting potentially. If I'm talking long strikes or I'm talking about bow snakes, if they're in range, they're going to come in and shoot me twice, or they give away first turn, I advance up the board, and then they go
You
for
might get
the
double turned,
double.
right?
Yeah. You might get shot 3 times between turn 1, turn 2, and then the
Mhm.
hero phase shooting. But for you, if you just, even if you happen to go first, you can advance up the board, and as long as you're outside of 12,
Right,
and you
right.
plan that
You can play
correctly,
your threat ranges where, okay, they can only move this far, and you know, be
correct.
pretty good.
That's the unpacking of what Paul mentioned a little bit earlier about you're really good at shooting. I think that's the key, right? And there is a lot
Mhm.
of shooting right now, and it's very high damage, low volume.
Mhm.
For most, it's not like the old meta of like Iron Drakes and like the 30 or 60 shots it used to get from a whole
Mhm.
bunch of different other armies. It is very mortal wound focused. But one thing I wanted to talk about was the sub factions.
Yep.
We will talk at your lists as well coming up. That's not
Mhm.
too far away. But when you are constructing now, are all 6 of them good? Are there some that right now work really well in the meta? And maybe when we go into Battle Line General's Handbook 2022, things may change. What your Levidons become Battle Line under?
Not
Is it?
LR. Not
Yeah,
LR.
not yet. Yep. You've got the Sharks of Futhan, and that's it. That's all your unlocking of Battle Line, other than your Reavers and Thralls, which are always
Yep.
Battle Line.
I feel like that there's 4 that are you'll see. The one I played these first for a couple months was Domehane, and we'll talk more about that. But just that threat of getting to fight twice with these thralls, these lawnmowers, as I call them, they can go in and do a lot of work and get into charge again. And even the triple redeploy, I've seen that whenever you do a thrall and reaver heavy list, there can be, it's not as good as a maw crushers where you get to triple everything, but you at least get to triple redeploy, and they made it the good version. Nautilus is kicking butt out there, and I'm gonna be trying some Nautilus too, because turning that turtle, giving him -3 rend anytime, every combat phase that you want to, and there's nothing they can do to shut it down for the bites and the tails. With the save stacking meta, I think that's becoming a lot more powerful. And the battle line. I was talking with some of the people at the tournament this last weekend and brainstorming, and they were kind of telling me how it works. And man, I can put that turtle in hunters once he becomes battle line, and now he loses his behemoth keyword because he becomes a battle line, and now he can't be roared, he can't be stomped, he can't be, or no, I guess he can be. You can't. Yeah, you can't Titanic duel or you roar him because he's in
No,
hunters.
he's not a hero. Yeah, but to be fair, like who knows if hunters is even going to still exist again in the new
Right.
book, right? So I wouldn't start buying out turtles to try to
No,
start
no, I
messing
don't
with
think just
them.
for that, but like that was just something that was like an interesting combination that and with his -3 rend, the other good thing about it is that since he can't be roared, you can give him, and this is in a current version, but you can give him the what's it called? Ferocious roar or whatever, monstrous roar thing where he fights at his top bracket for that
Oh
combat
yeah,
phase. So now even if they've got him at his bottom bracket, if he's in hunters, he can't be roared, so I can spend a command point on him, and now he's on 2-up save again, and he's got all his damage profile. So that's a monstrous, I don't know, something roar. I forget, I always get the name
I
wrong.
always get a metamorphosis, but that's the spell that turns them into a
Right, into
monster.
monster.
And the turtle doesn't degrade that much, but really why you'd want to be turning it
Hmm.
into the top bracket is the fact that your fins are damage 4, and obviously with
Right,
the Ren 3 Neg Ren
can do
3
a lot of work.
yeah, it can do a lot of work. Would you run multiple turtles under, is it Nocula?
Not a lar. I've got some two turtle lists that I've been toying around with. I'm concerned it might be too focused of something with a mortal against when I play against a mortal wound army. They might just be able to just auto beat me, but I'm gonna toy with it. I might try it out. But I think one is quite strong, and I like to run it with the reverberating carapace, so that +1 save and the +1 to hit for the ground troops is a bigger bubble. So that can, I think I'm gonna try some of that. Iron Rack, I think that there's some play in Iron Rack, especially if you want to go eel or shark heavy lists. Getting that once per turn, the threat of being able to turn on run and charge with either the king or your Morsar guard or your sharks. If if people aren't playing threat ranges of 14 inches, 20 inches plus a charge, so are they going to keep 32 inches away from you? No. So you kind of can pick your battles and go murder off that thing you need to assassinate. I feel like that's what the Iron Rat gives you. It's a once per game, um, or it can give you the retreat and charge, which if you get something stuck in, you can once per game get your retreat and charge. So I think that one has some play. I haven't really made very many lists with it, but I've tried a little bit on it.
I like the idea of like a reinforced Alapex unit being able to do that because,
Hmm.
and one of the cool things that I liked about the Alapexes is they now have coherency of, is it
The
3 inches?
3-inch coherency, yeah, that's, you can do some crazy things with formations, hey eggs, and you can just really, it's uh, you can either screen with them, which I've done that. Like I'll put two of them up there as a long, it's like a 12-inch screen, and then with even 3 inches from either side of that. So if you're trying to keep my thralls safe, I've done that before. Or just being able to like hop one over their line, even if the other one can't reach. And hey, I'm still within 3, so I can fight from the front and the back of a unit. Or trap them
It
in
also,
so they can't redeploy, or trap them so they can't retreat because I'm on both sides of them now. That kind of thing.
And that was what I was going to ask you about. For anyone who hasn't played with 3-inch coherency, right? Because it's a very new rule. For a lot of people, like I've been playing around with it with things like dragons, right? And I'm wishing that my little man crusher gargants would have 3-inch coherency. But why does that become powerful for someone who maybe thinks about, well, why would I reinforce that? Yeah, you get the champion, they get some cool things with the Alopex. But what does 3-inch coherency mean to you?
It just gives you that flexibility. I don't think I lean into it too hard on that unit, but just one, it's playing the game. I think that's 2 and 3 inch coherency is going to be so much better for all these, Pusco Blight Lords and all these stuff that have these giant wings. But then I just think it opens up the book a little bit so that you can play around the bubbles. I like to see sometimes you know, the 3-inch bubble that every model has that you can't finish a move next to unless you charge them. I think it really helps to screen out whenever you have a 12, two sharks that are 12 inches, and now you're at 3 inches on either side. Now you're about 18 inches of you can't land here. You have to fight this instead of fighting my thralls that are behind it or something like that.
It's worth looking into whether it's from board presence perspective or even just being able to like charge into sharks. And unit sizes are a lot smaller now. You're not seeing 40 60 blocks of units these days. It's very much around 5 to 15 usually at most. And if you can pin your 2 sharks in on either side of a unit on like a flank, and when you start going to the war of attrition and trying to keep coherency as an opponent, and it becomes very difficult for and even like if I want to retreat out of combat, retreating away from 2 sharks can be hard.
Yeah,
There's a lot of benefit in 3-inch.
the meta, more and more people are getting this 4-up. I'm drawing a
The
blank on the name.
rally.
And so they just want to retreat out and then use their 4-up rally. So sometimes if you can just lock them where, hey, you don't have a space to get your 5-inch move to get out of this combat to do that, it can really mess with some people. So I think that is one area that I've been toying with doing a little bit.
Any play on Bromdare there?
Not really. I mean, the Soul Scryer, I feel like he's already. I mean, if you want to do a null deploy, great. You can do that. You can have 3 Soul Scryers and you can have 12 units with nothing on the board. But the problem is the board being small, a lot of stuff will just take up the whole board and you can't land, or they'll get ahead of you on objectives early. I mean, it would be one to try to deal with the shooting, but we already have a different way to deal with the shooting. So I feel like that one's kind of a waste. And then Morphan, Eggs keeps trying to talk me into it because I can see the benefit of getting 3 plus D3 for those renderers. It's just having to keep the bubble, and then sometimes those units at a 5-up save, they can just wipe, or sometimes you don't have any models left to do the bring back slain. It has to have some of the models there. You're not like a death unit that can do that. So I'll toy around with that one, but I'm not. I've seen some people playing with that, but I haven't really leaned into it yet.
Yeah, I feel like if you're playing with Namartis, you're leaning more into the offense rather than the defense. And I love the idea of Morphan, but do I want to be building around the defense of bringing back slain models compared to having more offense, whether it is, Iron Rack, Dom Hain, or like all of the different, I'm like, I probably want to play more offense, especially again, as I'm focusing towards the wave of strike first and being able to deny my opponent shooting my models within ranges and things. So for me, but there's probably some benefit, especially again thinking about what's coming up, battle line. Maybe there's going to be some boosts. It's going to be focused on objectives that have more battle line models. I don't know. We don't know what we're going into,
and if I'm playing Morphan, I'm doing it with 2 Soul Renderers. You can't double heal the same unit, but you can 3 plus D3 2 different units of Thralls and Reavers that are in their bubbles. So you can bring back up to 12 models if you roll high, and that's 170 points, or 100, almost 200 points worth if it works out that way. So
Yeah, and as Jason's mentioning, we could go into the Attrition Wars. It's interesting because I've been playing Gloomspite Gits recently, and I've been running a whole block of 40 and 60 grots, and the War of Attrition and pulling through that many grots, for example, and then if I use Life Swarm, if I use a rally, if I'm bringing up models back, it becomes really hard to win an objective off that many bodies. And I guess if you reverse that and go, what, your Reavers come in, no, your Namarti come in units of 10.
Yeah.
So if you double reinforce them as a unit of 30, you're bringing back, 3 plus the slain models. Then you have rally. Could be tough to pull down those Namarti, but you're obviously very focused on them, as opposed to and that's points away from your other turtles, sharks, eels. Right. Cool. Anything else on sub factions? I think it's quite clear, but again, we are on the cusp of a new General's Handbook. So who knows what battle line focus will be, and maybe the shark stuff will become more popular. And Futhan, if you want to run sharks, could be still could be viable, but maybe it's not the bloodthirsty shiver that.
Yeah, I played early on. I tried a 2 king, and it was like 9 shark list. It was strong. It's still everything's moving 14 inches. A lot of shooting, but you give away the battle line, tactic. But most games you lose that anyway. So.
And I think Jerome made a really good comment here around the Namarti and your thralls. Is I wonder how good the Namarti goon squad's going to be in the battle line meta, because one thing that did change as well with your Namarti thralls is that you used to get, was it +1? Is it damage, or there was like +1 something if it had 1 wound, and then it used to be 4. That bracket got reduced to 3.
So on thralls, you get +1 attack if it's against single wounders, and you get +1 damage if it's against 3 or more. It used to be 4 or more wound. So they got another go up as well with their 2-inch range, and that being 3. But I still feel like every time I'm playing them, I'm running into Stormcast 2 wound stuff, or or Plague Bears, or there's still a lot out there that's 2 wounds. But having 2 different ways to get more attacks or better attacks I'll take it.
But we've had Nighthaunt. Nighthaunt's coming back. We've got Skaven coming back. We've got Sylvaneth, and maybe we'll see more Dryads and more single wound models there. Or they've got Kurnoth Hunters if they go down that route. You have Gits maybe getting a new book. So who knows? Maybe the wave of 1 wound models are coming back. So again, keep an eye out on that one. Anything else you want to add to that, or do you want to?
The only other thing I was thinking is that it feels like I'm more dependent on priority rolls than I was before. With having less units on the table with the points increase, that if I had like a lot of games where if you double turn me, you win. Or if I double turn them, I win, and if they get priority or double turn me, I'm in bad shape. So I feel like it's got a little bit more. The new Deepkin is more conscious of that, because you're not quite, without the +3 charge, you're not quite as fast, and without having as many eels and that kind of stuff as well. So with the thralls, if they get hit first, a lot of times they just blow up. But if they can punch first, they can do a lot of work.
But that's always been the case, right? Thralls are glass cannons. They hit really hard. They don't have a very good armor save. They die pretty quickly. And I know when I've got up against Thralls in the past, it's just about whittling them down as quick as possible before they get into combat and reduce the threat. That you're probably right. There's probably one thing has been the points increase means that there are less points.
I don't have the 2 more units of backup somewhere else that can help hold objectives or fight.
Which then probably leads in nicely to how you're thinking about your list. So the first list that you've given me is a Domhain list. I know you've been playing around a lot with Domhain. You got your Archilian King, and you've given it literally everything in the book.
Everything in the suit.
Everything that could be possible. It's the general with Unstoppable Fury, probably my favorite command trait in the entire book. You got the Arcane Tome. I assume it's got Flaming Weapon. You've got the Void Chill Darkness, which is a mount trait, and you'll explain all this stuff and what it does. You've got the Ishlan Tidecaster with the Countercurrent spell. You've also got the Eidolon of the Sea, which is our wizardy type Eidolon with the Steed of Tides. Love that it's coming back. I love the wizard Eidolon. As Eggs is saying, the alpha chat of the sea. It's
I think
so
you're going to
good.
see him. I think you're going to see him as allies. I don't think people have discovered it yet, but he's a good ally. He works. He works. That D3 to save works even if he's an ally.
I'll be honest with you. I had thought about it in my daughter's army, and painting the cloak as blood. But I'm sure you'll explain a little bit more about why you've gone that route. You've gone 20 thrall, 20 thrall, 10 thrall, 10. Oh no, sorry, 10 Reavers, 10 Reavers.
Yep.
2 Alapexes and Emerald Life Swarm and Burning Head. So it's 100 wounds, 1 drop. Ambitious with your triumph. You're at 1995.
Right. Yeah, gotta put one down anyway. Who knows? Sometimes they're at 2K. So these 2 lists are both one that I took to Vault Wars this last weekend. I was able to go 4-1 with it, but it was a fight, definitely. So the Vault Wars.
What is this? Yeah, what are you doing here?
Well, the Vault Wars format gives you 400 points of flex, so that's why you'll kind of see they'll be pretty similar lists with the 400 point difference. But what am I doing here? So really, I've played Deepkin for a long time, and I've never had like a magic focused Deepkin, and that's what this one is. Even though I'm not plus, the downside is I'm not plus to cast, but my Eidolon's rerolling casts. I've got the Tidecaster casting, the King is casting. I got Life Swarm and Burning Head, so if I need to do some damage or heal myself, I've got lots of options there with my heroes. And then I got these 2 blocks of thralls that are my main hammers, as well as the King. They, with the Domhain ability, if I go to the top of the turn and I kill what I'm in combat with the thrall, it gets to charge and it gets to fight again. Now it fights in normal order, so it doesn't get to strike immediately, but a lot of times once you get through their front line, now you're fighting their heroes, their wizards, their archers or something that's not going to be able to put up much of a fight. So that was kind of the thought behind this list. I liked having the Reavers. I think that they do a good to do some damage and screen, and they can hold a back objective and still interact with the game because they've got that 18-inch with the 8-inch move. They can still threaten the enemy. And then the 2 Alaplexes, the 2 Sharks, that just gave me another little hammer with some shooting to it. It's not quite as strong as the other 2, but it does give that, and it can got enough movement to keep up with the King. So it's been pretty cool. So that's kind of the thought on this list. The King with every buff, so Bladed Polearm gives him on the charge, he gets better damage and better rend, so it'll be 3 rend, 3 damage. If he turns on Flaming Weapon, it's 4 damage each. The Void Chill Darkness gives them -1 to their hits to all units, even if they're not fighting him, but if any part of the units within 3. And then the Unstoppable Fury gives +2 attacks whenever it's High Tide, and the King can turn on High Tide once a game after his charge phase. So a lot of times what I'll do with it is usually turn 1 is a setup. Like if I can give the other person turn, I will. And then turn 2, I try to set up some screens with either the Sharks or Reavers. So hey, if you're gonna get priority and come at me, you're gonna get to Unleash Hell. And then turn 2, if I get priority, then I'm running and charging with the Thralls, the King, the Sharks, and I'm trying to really take out a big chunk of their army. And then you've got your strike first turn 3. So at that point, that one thing that happened in a couple of games is like people were so worried about turn 3 that turn 2 they kind of didn't do much, and then they let me outscore them, or they didn't. They tried to keep their spacing, which I respect, but if you're not getting your full points, then you're in trouble for winning the game.
Turn 1 against IDK, it's a lesson you quickly learn, because if you worry about turn 3 and turn 2, you're already probably going to fail, because they're setting up, and once you're in turn 3, you're ruined. But going back to the Lord of Tides ability you mentioned, once per battle at the end of your charge phase, you can pick up to D3 friendly IDK units within 12, and they essentially get high tides. They get to fight first. So
Right.
you are going to fight first in turn 2 if you're going to be charging.
Right.
You then go into turn 3, and regardless of who wins priority, you're going to be striking first. Right. Obviously, you want to win it to do more damage and do more hero things, but
sometimes it's not bad to lose it if they're just retreating out, and then I just get to charge into them anyway. So, that turn 3.
Like that ability is so good. And when you ask somebody, or when you look at like, why would I go the Achillean King instead of Volturnus, you look at the customization that Paul has made to this list, and it's quickly clear why the Achillean King, a vanilla Achillean King, just has so much value compared to this unique Volturnus that is just what's on the War Scroll.
Right, and he's 40 points more as well for the Volturnus. And so
he's cool. He's got an eye patch.
Yeah, I think my best I've got is +10 to his attacks characteristics. So 5 units within 3 of him, and then he gets 13 attacks with that pole arm that's -3 rend, 4 damage each if I got flaming weapon. So it can get, I killed Nagash with him in one combat whenever he got fully buffed, and so that was pretty fun.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions. One, if I'm new to the Eidolon, because a lot of people don't use the Eidolon, I remember seeing more of the Storm.
Yeah, I played a lot of Storm in the last year, and now I've switched to the Sea more.
How do I play with it? How does it work? Like, am I putting it at the back of the field like a support piece Hurricanum type unit? Is it offensive? Is it on the flank? Like, how do you generally recommend I use the Eidolon of the Sea?
So I think the best lore to take with them is the Steed of Tides. So that's the teleport spell. He gets to teleport himself, or he can teleport the king or the Tidecaster, one of the foot troops, right? 9 inches away. So the best thing on his new War Scroll is he can do a 12-inch spell and make D3 units -1 to their save characteristic. And the FAQ said that they could be the same unit picked D3 times. So that thread of turning like -2 or basically adding -2 or -3 or -1 rend to your whole army when they fight that, that dangerous piece. I like to play him kind of up towards the front to where he can unbind. Now he's a double caster, double unbinder, and he gets to reroll all casts, dispels, and unbinds. So even though he's not +1, that reroll is, I see that reroll as being like a +1 or +2. It's similar to if he was just a single without the reroller, because you get a lot more 9s, you get a lot more. I've noticed that he's unbound quite a bit of stuff. Now when I'm playing against Croak and Nagash and Teclis, I'm still overmatched. I'm still not able to outmagic them, and that's one of the things I've ran into all 3 of those with this build, and I just didn't get off my spells when I need them. Even Nephrata, I think, plus the Bone Reaper's ability to turn mine -1 to my casting and unbinding was kind of shut me down too. But he's just, and then the other good thing about this Eidolon is he is so resilient. 12 wounds on a 3-up with a 5-up ward is good, but what makes him so resilient is once he casts, if he successfully casts any spells, he heals D3 that turn. And he's got a spell cast that can heal D3 for him for anything. So he can heal himself another D3. With Life Swarm, I got 2 more D3s. And with like Heroic Recovery, that's another D3. So like I could potentially heal like 15. He's only got 12 wounds, but I could heal 15 wounds if he got really down in health and I really focused all my magic into just healing him. So he's quite good at that. And he gets off the Burning Head and Life Swarm. Unless I'm against a really good caster, I get it off a decent portion of the time. And one
Arcane Corrosion. Oh, sorry, I was just going to mention Arcane Corrosion is another good spell. I know. Sorry, I'm just looking at the spell options and Steed of Tides is great. There's so many good spells here for your wizards. Like, I'm actually really liking. Sorry, continue about your endless spells. I'm just looking at this, going, Steed of Tides good, Counter Current good, Pressure of the Deep, Arcane Corrosion. Yep, I love that one.
Yeah, there's lots of good spell lore, and I think Countercurrent, I think I haven't actually cast it in any of the 15 games I've played, but it's nice to have the option. Normally I'm doing either Mystic Shield or Arcane Bolt with that Tidecaster, trying to Mystic Shield my King or my Thralls or my Sharks or the Eidolon or whatever I need to try to keep alive, or turning on an Arcane Bolt and charging him in to do some T3 mortals or something. That's the other cool thing about the King is the King does, on a 2-up on the charge, he does D3 mortals. So if I don't Flaming Weapon him, if I Arcane Bolt him, he can charge, do D3 mortals, and then do another D3 for the Arcane Bolt at the start of the combat phase. So you can kind of sometimes take off a 4 wound, something that's got 4 or 5 or 4 wounds left, and then go fight something else. I don't necessarily recommend like everyone go out and try to make this into a good magic army, because there's a third of the games that you're just going to get shut down, and you need to have ability to do stuff without magic. Because I, like in this tournament, I played Night Haunt twice. Well, my neg D3 save characteristic didn't work at all against that, but I think it was an interesting thing that I wanted to give a try, and I think that Eidolon is value to be in the list. Tidecaster is more for the rituals, but him having a spell cast, me getting up to 4 spell casts, get it to where people have to start making decisions instead of them just trying to auto unbind everything that comes out. Life Swarm is really good. I think Life Swarm plus Turtle is even better, because that's one of the hardest things about that Turtle is once he starts losing wounds, he's not a hero, so he can't heroic recovery himself. But with the Eidolon has a D3, he can either do D3 damage or D3 healing. So if you have the Eidolon and a Turtle with that Life Swarm, you can do 3D3 healing to that Turtle potentially. Really make them have to chew through that 2-up save again.
Would you consider giving it? I just want to go back to the Eidolon for a second, just because so many people haven't used it in the past. I'm looking at the Eidolon artifacts, and there's a couple of good ones that are worth considering. And whether somebody maybe here is sitting, they want to run Warlord, or maybe they're going to go with a different set of battalions, or maybe they don't want to give Arcane Tome Flaming Weapon for whatever reason. Would you consider something like the Bioshock Shell or the Horse Shell? Both being Eidolon artifacts. Kraken Tooth is an interesting one as well. A little bit of risk there if you roll the 1, but as you've already said, it has the ability to heal. So maybe, rolling a 1 and suffering D3 mortal wounds isn't so bad. But would you consider that?
The Kraken Tooth, I feel like is real swingy. It's a once per game as well, which if it's not really good, a once per game, I don't like to lean into. But the War Shell and the Bioshock Shell, I liked the old Biovitalic Shell that they used to give the Kings, where you could turn it on. But I looked through those, and none of them really caught my fancy, so I kind of kept moving. So I even forget what those two. I'm reading them right now.
The Bioshock Shell does 3d6. If you're you got to beat the enemy hero's bravery characteristic on 3d6, and if you do, it strikes last. So
the problem is that like the Wizard Eidolon, he can do a little bit of damage in melee, but you don't really. His job is not really to go in there and go kill a monster like the other Eidolon. And then War Shell, once per battle, start of the combat phase, unleash the power, unmodified hits. Oh, yeah, made with a 2 to hit fails. Okay, 1s and 2s to hit. 1s already fail, so that does nothing. I guess you can't re-roll 1s, but you can't re-roll 1s against that effect, I think. But I don't know, 1s and 2s fail. If something's hitting on 2s, I can get rid of like 20% of their damage. Okay, but I don't think that's worth it.
I think where I like the Bioshock Shell, if I could go back in time 6 months, where we were in this very hero hammer, Morathis, Archaons, Nagashas, absolutely just terrorizing Kragnos, terrorizing. I could see the ability, once per battle, roll 3d6, get higher than 10. You are striking last, and that big monster piece is kind of shut down for a little. But I think to Eggs's point as well, Jason mentioning in the chat, one of the other artifacts we haven't spoken about is the rune of Surging Gloomtide, which allows you to throw on an extra boat on the table. I think that one is a really good artifact because getting a second boat on the table is going to give you another, well, one, you're clogging up the board and you can do a lot of things with that.
Right.
But two, the Gloomtide giving you, is it a 5-up ward if you're within range?
Right.
Or is it a 6-up ward?
It's a 5-up ward for like thralls and reavers for the ground troops. So the Namarti troops, wholly within 6. It doesn't do any offensive damage, but you can garrison it with a big boat with 10 models or a small boat with 5. So I definitely think that you'll see some. If I have a second artifact, I might go for that one as my second a lot of times, because being able to, against Beast Claw Raiders, against a lot of the Iron Jaws or whatever else, just being able to throw something that's in their way that they have to take the long way around, stuff that doesn't fly, I think can be quite good. I think it's kind of frustrating for the opponent sometimes, but there's lots of things in this game that are frustrating for the opponent.
Yeah, cool.
And it's not as bad as what I used to do, where I would deploy both boats on their territory down the 2 lanes that they needed to travel at the start of the game. Now we're down to 1 boat, and the first one has to be wholly within my territory. So I think they've made it, improved it, but I'm still toying with that, how to best use the second boat.
The other consideration is that there's a couple of new grand strategies to choose from, and one of them is based around boats. So getting a second boat on the table will increase your chances of getting the grand strat. And again, because we're going into a new General's Handbook, who knows if we're going to have Hold the Line? Who knows what we're going to have coming up? So who knows if there will be grand strategies at all? Maybe it'll only be Battle Tome only or White Dwarf only supplements, and maybe there are no grand strategies in the next battle pack.
I really hope not. I think that's the wrong way to go. I'd rather have standard and these be more of narrative, but I don't know. I feel like
all I'm saying
there's such a mix of what's good and what's bad. Deepkin has good stuff. I will give you that. 3 of ours are achievable most games. Kill 2 units in the strike first turn. Okay, I do that almost every game. Kill something with, kill a hero or monster with thralls. Well, if I'm playing thrall heavy, kill something that's full health and 10 wounds with sharks. If I'm playing shark heavy, I can do that. And then kill something that's within, or make sure there's clear off everything that's within 12 of a boat. People aren't thinking about that, definitely, and they forget about that. There's that's even an option, and so a lot of times you can get that one if they're not ready for it.
All I'm trying to say, Paul,
is it might come up.
No. Well, like when I do these reviews, like when Games Workshop show me the books and I'm like looking at grand strategies, most of
what
the
are they
comments,
thinking, right?
Well, most of the time people are like, cool grand strategies, but not as good as what's currently in the book. Hold the Line, Beast Master.
They could have the standard ones be harder to get, which I think they need to be. I think they definitely need to be harder to get, and so that would make it even better.
All I'm trying to say is don't poo-poo on these grand strategies, because there might be a world where we live in where the grand strategies either no longer exist in the battle pack, or they are completely rubbish and you are forced to go your RDK ones.
Maybe there's only 2 or 3 good ones that are in the standard pack, and then there's others that are really hard to get,
Correct. Eggs mentioning in the chat as well. A second boat is really good as well for one of your. There's a couple I think there's at least one of your battle tactics, like deny trespassers, that are based around your Gloomtide, so it makes it even easier to score that battle tactic.
Right.
Side question, Jerome asking, if you could guess or pick a future Deepkin model or kit, what would it be? What are you missing? What would you love to see in the Deepkin range?
I think it'll be a mega crab, because everyone loves the little crab. I think if they did a turtle size mega crab, but there's lots of stuff we talked about trying to bring like a blue whale or a orca or something, or riding a king riding an orca, like a killer whale, or do something like some endless spells like that, like have like tentacles that like grab you, like and slow down your movement or something. And then we talked about some stuff. Me and Eggs have been talking about different. Yeah, he wants crab armored thralls that are like 2 up, 3 up save or something like that. That are like tougher to kill, maybe slower, but a little bit more like Phoenix Guard or something like that. And we also have the giant squid. Yeah, definitely got to go for that too.
Yeah, I want a giant squid. Like I want like a kraken. I want something
Yeah.
like give me more. I think it's one thing that if I was what would draw me into Deepkin is more of the sea creatures. Like I think about the abyss, and I think about even in our current world, the real world, what is just undiscovered under the sea. And you see some of those pictures of monsters that are living under the sea right now, and there's some scary looking stuff.
Yeah.
If they brought in more of that monster.
Yeah,
You got me.
what's the name of that fish that has like the lure on the front of it that's lights up, that like
Oh
has the
yeah,
big
the
old
little.
teeth, the anglerfish or whatever? That would be cool. Even like jellyfish, where like aether wings, but they're jellyfish or something like that. I would love something like that too.
Shut up and take my money. More monsters, and then make them zombieified and put them into Soulblight and have a whole army of undead sea creatures, and you just hit 2 birds, 1 stone. Sign me up. Put it in the comment section what you want in the book. I would love more monsters. More monsters. Is there anything else you'd add on to this particular list? I really like it. It obviously has a very heavy Reaver, Thrall, Namarti kind of focus. There's certainly things you could do here if you didn't want. And obviously, by the way, this is not the one and only way to play this faction. You want to run a turtle. You want to not run the Eidolon. Cool, you do you. But this has gone well for you so far.
Yeah, and so one thing that I may have kind of skipped over, but the Eidolon with the Steed of Tides, you spin, if he's already within 12 inches of what you're wanting to debuff their save, you just cast his spell. But if you don't, you cast Steed of Tides, teleport 9 inches away, and then you minus D3 to their save, and people will get pretty nervous whatever their Maw Crusher or their big or their Mega Gargant gets no save or something like that. One thing that's kind of, I think, surprising that is a combo that I can do with this list is that Eidolon plus the Burning Head. So he can cast the D3 Mortals spell. He can cast Burning Head and do D3. You can get like an Arcane Bolt and the Killing King charge in, and you do 2 more D3. And against something that's got like a really 2 up save or something, you can get it with. There is some mortal wounds. Deepkin have always been low ability to deal with Bastillodon or something is tough, or at least the old one. Anything with a really that's mortal wound, but we still don't have a lot of ward saves. I mean, we have some boat saves. Our little heroes have it, but it's definitely a weakness of the army, is just not having that resiliency of the ward saves or the summoning.
Which might be another argument towards getting the second Gloomtide boat to get that extra reward. Last question about this list that I've been but my burning head I've been wanting to ask is you've got the aspect of the sea, and one of the command traits that I really liked, if you were to make the Eidolon your general, is the endless sea storm. Now it's an interesting one, right? Because it's only for the aspect of the sea. And if it's the general and it casts a spell that's not unbound and it's with an unmodified cast of 7 or more, your Eidolon can cast an extra spell.
Yeah, I have
It's
played.
tempting. It's
I have
tempting.
played some games with that and Eidolon, because he's rerolling all casts. He tends to get off 1 or 2, right? I've had it to where he just runs out of things to cast. Like he casts his 2 spell. He casts his War Scroll spells. He has 2 War Scroll spells. He has 1 lore spell, and then he's got. He casts Life Swarm, Burning Head, Metamorphosis. Eventually people run out of unbinds and you're re-rolling. So I've definitely had him where he's got an Arcane Bolt on him, even though I don't have a way to use it. He's metamorphosized because why not? Turn him into a monster. So I think there's a play with that. It's just a trade-off for that. The Unstoppable Fury is hard to beat. I think it's a better. It's a better command trait, but I'm welcome to somebody playing the Eidolon of the Sea and making him better.
By the way, I fully support you with Unstoppable Fury. It is certainly the stronger when you've got the Archelian King. But I know when I was looking at the Eidolons, I'm like, oh, I like the Endless Sea Storm. Like, I don't mind Ancient Pride, although I probably wouldn't if I wasn't going to run the Archelian King. Maybe Ancient Pride. If I was running the Storm version, yeah, maybe Nightmare Legacy. But of the three of the Eidolons, Endless Sea Storm was my favorite. But when you compare it to Unstoppable Fury wins hands down. I can't argue.
And he's already got a built-in Master of Magic, basically, with his reroll every cast and unbind. So you don't really need to pull that one in.
Jason has actually just reminded me. Would you consider going Warlord or some other one to get an extra spell? And you obviously get that on both the Eidolon and the Tidecaster. Or do you think one drop is just too good for you at the moment?
I think with this, especially with this tournament, I wanted to have a 1-drop list, and the other one ended up being 2 drops because I wanted to be able to deal with that if I really needed to go first. But I think it's possible. I would probably lean more into getting the second artifact so that I can throw the boat out there before the extra lore, because he's already got 2 good War Scroll spells and then 1 lore spell. So, and that's, maybe if you were doing I forget the thing that lets them do extra casts, you'd go for the double extra lore spells and stuff. But I don't know, maybe if I did that, then the king would have flaming weapon and he would have an arcane bolt on him, and and then cast a mystic shield from one of them, and just he's only 7, but let him just rev him up and throw him at the enemy and let him do this work.
As you said, you're not the best spellcasters in the world. Like, you're probably mid-table spellcasters. Like, you're never going to compete against Tzeentch. You're never going to compete against Lumineth. But when you come against all those factions that are kind of mediocre, you are certainly kind of up there now, especially with the Eidolon. But let's talk about the second list. Chow.
Yeah. So
a lot of
not
commonality.
much change there. Yeah. Main thing that I put in was fulminators. I feel like fulminators are probably the best bang for your buck of any unit out there if you want to have a hammer. And so I've got 4 of them because my Stormcast army I've got over here. So I thought those would fit in good. I did have a dragons version because 2 dragons can do work in any army too. With just they don't quite synergize, but just having that threat range is crazy good. And then the Shadow Stalkers, I actually feel like that they did a ton of work for 120 points this tournament. Like, a lot of times I would use them as a front screen. So I'd deep strike them, and instead of moving, they get to teleport, right? So I'd deep strike them up 9 inches away and say, here you go. You can kill this 120 points. You can shoot at it and then you can fight it. And all my good stuff is going to hang back here and hope to get the double turn and come at you next. Or if I don't get or if I win the priority roll, I can teleport the Shadow Stalkers back onto the objective out of the way and go in. And they also give you just that. This army needs to have a lot of I feel like it needs to have a lot of its army doing work in melee, because you're not going to just win 5 turns by just sitting on objectives. If you don't kill a decent portion of the other armies, they'll summon in, they'll revive themselves. And so that's why I go.
What else were you considering? Because your ally choices are Cities of Sigmar, Daughters of Cain, Lumineth Realm Lords, Stormcast Eternals, Sylvaneth. That is a very deep roster.
Yeah, it's quite a good one. I'm a little nervous about Lumineth getting to bring Deepkin and Cities and Daughters of Cain now too. There might be bow snakes with Sentinels. I don't want to see that list. But I've been most of the things that I were looking at. I looked at these 2 units. I have a dragon, 2-pack of dragons that I think works pretty good there. I don't own any of them, but the guys with the way pipes.
Tree revs.
The tree revs, instead of Shadow Stalkers, they do a lot of the same function for less points. So I played around with them, but I don't own any of them. I think that there's quite a few combos you can go. I used to play a lot of Go Trek. he's tough to fit in the new one without, like, when I used to be able to play and give him the run and charge. Now his threat range got ridiculous, but I can't give him that with the new book. So he's not as likely to be played with this new book. But
And who knows, those Gossamide archers, the new Lumineth fairy looking archers could be a nice addition too to this type of list. If you're looking for, and I think you said mortal wounds is one of those areas you're kind of lacking, that could possibly be a good option if they are more. If they're more Sentinel and less Bliss Barb Archer, I think is the comparison. Everyone's wondering, like, on the spectrum, are they more Bliss Barb? Are they more Sentinel? And if they're on that, yeah, I mean, they look like they can move fast and they've got some potential things.
Yeah, I think that they're like half of what the Foxes do a little bit, which is kind of annoying. But I think that you can shoot them off if you've got any kind of shooting. That'll be one of the first things you just shoot off to get out of your way, and because they don't have a great save, they don't have a ton of wounds. But I think they've got some play.
Would you bring in something like Gotrek, Mega Gargant, Kronspine?
I've toyed with
them?
I've toyed with the Kronspine. I don't think Mega Gargant really works with the army. You're already, I know everyone feels this way, but you're already so like pushed on points that given that many, I would rather probably have a turtle because it synergizes than a Mega Gargant, even though it's not nearly as many wounds, but it's still similar difficulty to bring down for most units if they don't have a lot of mortals. But Kronspine, the list I toyed with was using the Eidolon of the Sea, tying him to the Kronspine, and now he's mobile. He gets what, +1 to cast if he's in the bubble.
To the cast.
So now I'm re-rolling casts and I finally get a +1 and I can turn on, do all his good stuff. So that's the one that I've kind of toyed with. I'm a little nervous about what Kronspine's going to do to the meta, but we'll see how that goes. I don't like the no retreat stuff. I feel like that can be a bad experience if you're like, okay, and all this stuff can't retreat. I charged into you and you can't retreat away and you got to just eat this damage. And so I hope they get a good FAQ because there's I've seen a lot of like edge cases where I'm concerned the Kronspine might mess with the game a little bit.
But again, who knows what's coming? Who knows what's coming? There's some good stuff. I think, the other good thing about the Kronspine, if you're considering it, is the ability to give +1. If you do all that attack from the bounded hero, it means everyone within 12 is going to get it. So if you had like those 2 units of buffed up thralls, they could go in with a +1 attack. Not +1 attack. Well, they obviously do the pluses from attack. They
get a plus to hit, but yeah. The other thing with the thralls is if you've got the turtle, he's already given away that +1 to hit bubble to everything in his bubble for the thralls and reavers in melee, or actually not. Yeah, thralls and reavers in melee. So that's why the turtle I think synergizes good with some thralls too.
Yeah. So I guess pros and cons.
Point. Yeah.
There you go. Any favorite synergies and combinations you talk about with your type of faction? Like if I was starting off, whether I run an army like yours or I bring in eels and other things, is there any favorite combinations that you love? I assume it's the Archillian King.
Yeah, I like to. I mean, I think that he gives so much flexibility on what you're going to go charge into, and him and another unit. And with him getting to turn on strike first for D3, he gets to turn it on. I've got my normal strike right after that, so it might be 4 units that fight before the other person gets to fight. If it's my turn, which is when he can turn it on. I think there's good combos. I think the turtle and the sharks work good together because that +1 to save turns them from a 4 up to a 3 up. He's a good investment of points, but he works good together. Reavers. I mean, there's lots of. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Thrall Master because I haven't really put him in with very many lists. But the Thrall Master and Lotan, those both do good to buff up those thralls if you're gonna play a thrall heavy list, just different ways. Because I played one tournament with both of them, and so I could turn on exploding 6s and +1 to hit and +1 to wound, and really just chew through stuff, and still have the normal extra damage and extra attacks that the Thrall is his book. So I think that's one I didn't talk about, but I think there's some play. It's not as vital, I don't think, but it's definitely playable there. And I used to be a huge fan of a turtle with a bunch of Ishlian guard. I feel like I played that before other people were playing it because I felt like they gave such a good value. And then when their points went up to 195, they're not quite as good, and there's a lot more mortal wounds out there to deal with them. So they can't get a 2-up save anymore. They can only go up to a 3-up, which is probably better for the game, but it definitely nerfs them some.
Yeah, I was just revisiting the Thrallmaster because I remember it being quite strong. Like I remember when I was doing the Fury of the Deep review, and I'm looking at the Thrallmaster versus Idiot Fireslayer with, basically rewarding people dying. I remember the Thrallmaster being hot. And if I look at different fighting stances of rerolling ones to hit with a Namarti unit, or exploding sixes, getting the 2 hits instead of 1. Those, and even like the other one, which was the subtract 1 to wound roll aura.
Just having the flexibility to be offensive or defensive and turn it on anytime you need, every combat phase. That's what I think his utility is.
And even Lotan getting the +1 to wound rolls for melee weapons, wholly within 12. That's a great ability too, because there's not a lot of ways to buff up wounds. And there's also not a lot of ways to debuff wounds. So getting a +1 to your wound rolls from Lotan is hot.
Right, because most of the book is 3s to wound anyway. So getting to 2s is super good.
Yeah. Shaun just asking, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but Shaun's a friend of the channel. Thoughts on 2 turtles in the new book?
Yeah, I've been toying with. I haven't seen anybody else playing them, but I've been toying with them. It's a lot of points for 32 wounds, but they can do some damage, and so I think I'm going to try it out. See how it goes. But I want to try it out a small thing, and rather than a GT that sit there with get immortaled off. But
could be good for a 1 day, or especially like if you put it under that Nauticla. I hate Games Workshop sometimes. Just they put plain English for me. But like having those 2 as battle line, and then you got 1,000 points to spend on heroes and support troops and things. I think, by the way, I just want to call out the Shadow Stalkers are a great ally option for you, especially with some of those battle tactics like being in your opponent's territory. Obviously, you can teleport there and jump onto objectives, which is great. But also the ability to have a mobile screen that just keeps teleporting in front of your troops so long as they're outside of 9 inches from the enemy. That just is so powerful. And, if you need to screen somewhere else, you can literally teleport to the other side of the board. I'd almost be tempted to run 2 of them. Although
I've used them mostly as, like you said there, where if I can, it's a defense against the priority roll. If I fail the priority roll, great, come kill this stuff, and if I get it, I can move them out of the way. But you can use the same thing you can use Aether Wings or Sharks, but they're just different points that you're investing and into that kind of movement. But if you're playing a really mounted list, you don't need it as much. Some of my next ones I'm going to be running is more Sharks and Turtles, and if I've got 14-inch with run and charge, I don't need. I can stay back further than if I'm a 6-inch. Same thing. So.
Yeah, you might find benefit in like Aether Wings or no screens at all for one of those more turtle and shark and eel kind of lists. But when you've got these blobs of 20 thralls moving up the board or reavers, you want to be protecting them. Maybe things like the Shadow Stalkers not getting in the way of your speed would be really helpful, because you'll find most allies will probably not be fast enough, or you won't have the movement.
The Shadow Stalkers can teleport at any time, so it's not they don't have to wait till the end of the combat phase like some stuff. So you can teleport them right away if you need to get them out of the way. And that's the way I play is pretty aggressive. You'll see that that's what most of my games I lose is because I'm too aggressive. But the having something like that can hold a back objective and then jump onto wherever is empty is quite good, because I'm wanting to move most of my army forward.
Yeah. By the way, we just talked about this. You might want to go back onto YouTube and go look at the what we literally just talked about. Incarnate, good option. Turtle, probably better option with the synergies. It'll bring some things to the party, but Pros and cons. Pros and cons. Got some good attacks. It got some good options. By the way, with the the Incarnate, one thing I was really worried about initially was having the bounded hero die quickly and it going Hulkamania and going wild. When it goes wild, as long as you keep it away from
No,
your own
I feel like
units,
they messed that up the way that they wrote it, where it doesn't even it's barely ever gonna fight your own units. What I mean, I've seen lists where
correct.
people are trying to kill their own hero so that it goes wild and gets
You
in
get the
their face.
auto
That's one of the
+1
things
to
I don't
hit.
like. Right.
It can run and charge. I actually I had Hulkamania Incarnate, and it ate a lot of change and Kairos Fate Weaver. So
Yeah.
two bin chickens
I don't I
while it
don't think
was
I
running
don't think
wild.
people would play it as much, but what I would have rather it been is like whoever goes second in priority, they get to control the incarnate if it's wild. That would definitely make people, or I mean, that would make
I
people
wouldn't
think
be paying.
twice
I
about
wouldn't pay.
putting like a skink priest or whatever, some little hero being the incarnate's controller.
Yeah, but I'm not paying 400 points for you to control something to eat myself. But do you have any favorite battle tactics to play with? Obviously, you got the general ones. Like
Mhm,
they're all well known. Is
mhm.
there any particular ones that you like from this book?
Yeah, there's a few that I like. I don't know the names very well, so you might have to put the page up. But there's one where we kill 2 units in the strike first phase. Almost every one
Assassins
of
of the
my
High Tide.
yeah,
You
almost
complete this
every
battle
one of the
tactic of.
go ahead.
I was just going to read it out. You complete this battle tactic if 2 or more enemy units are destroyed during this turn, with attacks made by friendly Deepkin units affected by High Tide.
So almost every turn 3 or high tide, I kill 2 units. So that one is, I think, really easy to achieve most of the time. And you don't have to pick which 2 units either. So like even if you fail to kill one, you've got normally got like 5 or 6 units that are fighting something that turn if I haven't messed up. And then there's one where the thralls need to kill something. Let me pull
You
that
do
one up.
Revenge of the Namarti. You complete the
Yeah.
battle tactic if the enemy hero or monster is destroyed by attacks by friendly Namarti. That would be
Mhm.
another one good for your type of list.
Right. Yeah. You just have to kill something with Namarti. If you've got a lot of Namarti, that's a pretty easy to achieve. The one with the sharks is, I think, a little more risky unless you have a lot of sharks. You have to kill something that's full health. I think it's got to be 10 wounds or more and hasn't taken any damage. So that one I think is pretty
8
risky.
wounds.
8
8
wounds or
wounds.
more.
The Predators of the Deep. Sean
Mhm.
asking a good question as well. Does the battle tactic also count if the king triggers the high tide? So you
I don't think so, but I need to read it again because the battle he is treated as in high tide, but he doesn't necessarily turn it on for the whole army. Let
It'd
me
have to be unit. It'd have to be Deepkin units affected by high tide. So you'd have to be able to. The
so it'd have to be
thralls would have to.
the king and the sharks that he turned on, or what. He only rolls D3, so it might just be him if you roll a 1.
And
So
you need two.
you
You
need to
need
kill two
two
units,
units.
which Murder King can kill 2 units, but when you start splitting attacks, you know how sometimes I don't know. I had a what was it? I think I was 11 attacks with that pole arm, and I rolled like 7 1s, on my 2s and 2s. You
I
never
did that
know.
with
So,
I did that with my Gatebreaker the other week, where I had 10 attacks and I rolled about 7 1s and a couple of 2s, and I fluffed them all. It was the
mhm.
worst.
so, so there might be that way to do that. The other one is the get off me boat, as I like to call it. Basically, uh, there has to be an enemy within 12 of a boat, and at the end of the turn, no enemies within 12 of the boats. So that's the downside to that one is if you have 2 boats, now you have to clean off both boats of enemies, which normally isn't too hard to do, but you know. And then there's even a grand strategy that has to do with the boats, which really wants you to put your boat in the corner and stay away from it. Basically, at the end of the game, if they're not near your boat, then you within 3 of your boat, you win. But I mean, the grand strategies it's just better. The normal ones are better right now. But
which is what I was saying before. It's like we could be in a world, and the new General's Handbook is only 6 months now, so it's not one for the year. There looks like there's going to be a part 1 and a part 2.
Yeah, we might get
so
one in July or something that about there. Maybe.
yeah, we could get June, July, and then another one in December. So who knows what's coming up? When you're watching this video. I've got two final questions for you, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. Do you have any deployment tips for me? If I'm a Deepkin player, especially a Thrall heavy type, is there any ways, again, matchup dependent and battle plan dependent, but general battle deployment tips for me?
So there's a few things. One, if your boat can be up front and center ahead of your army, I like to deep strike a unit of Reavers or the Tidecaster or something in that boat. Now, if they have to shoot at me, they're shooting at whatever's in that boat. I'm getting -1 to hit, +1 to save, maybe even lookout sir as well. So normally I'm playing. I used to play always with my Ishlian as my front screen, but now I play with the Reavers that are like, hey, if you're going to charge me, you're going to eat an Unleash Hell from Reavers that are on 3s and 3s. And normally I kind of build a little bit of a castle. King needs to be safe. Don't let them snipe off your king. They can't do it with shooting most of the time, but if you put them too close to the front line, you can lose a lot of value there. The Eidolon, he's actually pretty tanky. He's not bad to go force them to shoot at him or attack him because he's going to survive most combats, especially if you can find a Stour and all out defense him. Now he's on basically a 1-up, 5-up. And he has ways to heal himself, so he's not a bad one to put up there. The real problem, if you're playing Thralls with the 6-inch move, you want them to be as close as you can, but you don't necessarily want them to be what gets charged into and gets deleted. So I like to play a little screen of Reavers in front of them or Aether Wings in front of them or whatever I can and kind of keep that bubble going. If you're playing with the Turtle, he's usually your centerpiece model. You want everything in his bubble to get the +1 save that you can, -+1 to hit, and you want to kind of move them up with together. So those are kind of my main deployment stuff.
Good tips, very good tips. And I think, using the board to your full advantage and just thinking about where the threats could be coming from. And I think for me, one of the things as an opponent I'm looking for as the weak points is where is it that I can position or attack certain areas so that I can shoot at the things that I want to shoot at. Because over here, these tough units, especially when you use to run like defensive eels a lot, like I try to avoid that side. I try to look for areas that I can snipe through and then get into the juicy stuff, knowing that the first turn or two, I might be shooting things that I don't want to be shooting, but eventually I'll get to the good stuff. So I guess that's where your castle mentality and really looking at the board and spatial awareness is going to help you understand where to be moving, what to be positioning, how to protect certain key pieces. Because again, one thing that I've learned very quickly about Deepkin is how many linchpins you have in the army, especially like with the turn 3 stuff. Knowing that the Achillean King or Volturnus will allow you to use High Tide before High Tide. There's a couple of things that I'm looking for, and I need to get to those linchpins. And mortal wounds are going to help cut me through certain things. Coming from reserve and changing the landscape of how you screen is another way that can happen.
That's another thing is I like to have like a back screen if I can, not letting people behind you because they can really chew you up if they can get behind you and make their charge or whatever. So, and then George's question, you can't put the king in the boat. You can't put anything that's on a mount in the boat, but you can put the foot heroes there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I remember there was something about the 5-up ward as long as they didn't have a mount. And there was something about mounts. I remember specifically.
Yeah, you can't put eels in the boat or sharks or turtles because they've got a mount.
Final question, and then I'm going to go make some lunch. What is the key to success? If I'm going to run Deepkin, I want to do well like you. You've obviously gone to Masters. You've gone 4-1. You've done really well with Deepkin. What's the key to being a good Deepkin player? Is it a strategy, whether it is something in particular about like faction and how do I set up a turn 3 or take advantage of those types of things? Like what is it that's going to help me be a good player?
Yeah, I feel like the couple things that are most important is understanding threat ranges. A lot of Deepkin stuff has, if you're playing with mounted stuff, it's got a better threat range, or run and charge gives you extra threat range, or that kind of stuff. So you need to really understand what's the threat range of how do I get into combat with something, or how do I keep the other guy from, I normally set up to where, hey, if they're going to charge me, they're going to make a 10-inch charge. So it can happen, but it's a lower probability. And then the other thing is really picking your battles. Like, people see Deepkin as, oh, you just push forward and kill everything. And a lot of the people that go, 1 and 4 with Deepkin just think, oh, well, I'm just stronger than you. And I do have a lot of strengths, but there's some frailty in there too, and you don't have as many models on the board. So you really have to scalpel off. Am I going for left side of the board, right side of the board, or do I need to kill this hero and this battle line? And that's what I'm going to focus on this unit, because if you just kind of push everything forward, you're going to get hit back, and you're gonna lose too much in the trade-off, and you're not going to have the sustainability, because people have summoning, people have ways to heal back and recover, and you're going to be short at the end of the game. So those are a couple things that I've got there. I do want to shout out Iron Realms podcast. Me and a couple guys do a weekly podcast. I know it's on the AOS Coach. You throw us up. I appreciate that. But those are a couple things that I think are key to this army.
Yeah, no, you're right. Are the companions counted as mounts? Like, if I'm running Lotan and Lotan's got little octopus man, does that mean Lotan can't get the benefit? I know, like, this might be an FAQ thing. People can obviously look at the books when we're not live streaming. Just an interesting question coming up from George.
It says this unit is accompanied by Octar, a familiar armed with tentacles and hand weapons. It doesn't say it's a mount anywhere, so I don't think it is. I think it's just an extra attack. But
people can put in the comment section if it is or isn't. Obviously, it'd be crazy if Lotan couldn't get the benefit by being in the boat. But look at the rules, and obviously we could spend 5 minutes looking at the interactions and the language. It's not a very interesting show. But Paul, thank you so much for a lot of what you've shared. So much great wisdom. Actually, I just want to reinforce one thing. I think too many people put too much emphasis on the turn 3 fight first. And I think that's, to your point, the people who aren't doing very well at the moment are over expecting what that's going to deliver. But for me as an opponent, what I try to do is try to use through attrition, reduce the amount of damage. I know that turn 3 is coming. I know the fight first is coming. So what can I do between now and then to reduce that damage? How can I, bring down, those key combat elements? And, in the past it was eels, it could be sharks, it could now be thralls. What can I do so that the hit isn't as impactful?
Right.
It means I could save my finest hour as well, right? Like, I'm not going to burn it early. I'm going to keep it for that critical time. And if you put too much emphasis on it and not the pieces preparing for the fight first, you're not going to get the value out of it, and then your big trick's gone.
Yeah, one thing that can really you might want to use if you're playing against Deepkin is, if you've got a tar pit, turn 2, get that tar pit in combat with the stuff you don't want to come at you, and leave it there. You know what I mean? If you've got plague bears or Nurgle stuff or something that's hard to kill, don't let me go around your army and go kill your good stuff. Force me to fight somewhere where I don't want to fight. But it's easier said than done, because sometimes I still kill whatever it is. But and then it's a fun game, and so it's been good. And I also want to say, Coach, appreciate if you guys haven't gone on the Discord. We're playing TTS, me and my buddies. I'm on there playing a couple of games a week at least on the coach Discord, and it's been a great community, especially to have over COVID, and I've got to make some good friends. So I do appreciate you for having that for us.
I think what's really cool as well is I can actually drop in at any point in time, and whether it's my server or someone else's server, if I'm seeing, whether it's Eggs, whether it's yourself, whether it's anybody in the server playing a game, and I'm either interested in seeing, or maybe I want to pick up a trick, or And sometimes people are in a very competitive match and you just sit there as a silent observer. Sometimes it's very casual and people just want to chat and hang out. We're just having a good time. And, we have chats and we can ask like, hey, why did you do this? And what were you trying to achieve? And there's actually a little bit of coaching at the same time. And I think that's really where we learn through experience. Yes, we're talking through the good stuff here, but it's actually seeing it in play and what's the rationale behind the decision. So thanks for sharing. Again, links down below. Come join us on the Discord. We are almost at 5,000 people. I don't know if you know this. That's almost 5,000, almost 5,000, the biggest AOS server on the internet. But come join us if you haven't already. Links down below. But Paul, you are an absolute legend. I'm glad we waited for the new book to drop and talk about Deepkin, because there's a lot of cool stuff. And there will be a complimentary show in a couple of weeks where I'll be talking to Eidolon Musk, aka John Anderson, about, I love that name, the fact that he's Elon Musk. I'm like, you smart bastard. Paul, thank you for your time. I'm going to go make some lunch. Thank you for everyone who listened and joined us on the live chat. And as always, thanks to my patrons, and thanks for everyone. You know what to do: comment, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Almost at 15,000 subscribers. Come, please subscribe. Yep. Paul, they're a legend. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining.
All right, smell you later.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so link is down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.